These reusable and washable paper towels are so great to have in the kitchen, and they are so quick and easy to make. These are especially important to have in your kitchen when you're holiday baking. It's easy to clean up all those spills and messes, especially when you're making cookies and all kinds of treats for the holidays. I'm going to show you how to do them right now. So you need a towel and you need some fabric. This is a Dollar Tree towel that I got for this project. I was using flannel fabric as well because it is a little more absorbent. I highly suggest that you get some clips. I used a turning tool, although you can use whatever you want for the corners. And then you're going to want to have a 7 by 7 inch or 18 by 18 centimeter template to trace. So then put the template on your fabric. You only need one layer of fabric. I was making multiples, so that's why I have it on a folded fabric. And then trace around with some tailor's chalk or a marker. So you can get about 6 of the squares that are going to be cut out of this. When measuring out your squares, just be sure not to include the hems that are part of the towel. That will add a lot of bulk and you don't want that. So once you have all the pieces cut, then it's time to match up one flannel piece with one towel piece. If there is a right side to the towel, put that towards the right side of the fabric. Most towels aren't going to have a right and wrong side, but they might. So just go ahead and match those corners up. Once they are matched up, you can go around and clip the edges in order to keep them secure. So once you have everything pinned together, it is time to sew. I did a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. And then you're going to want to leave a pretty substantial gap because this is going to be a thick material in order to turn it inside out. And you also want to sew on the cotton or the flannel, whatever the fabric side is, rather than on the terry cloth. That way you can see the stitches a lot more easy on this side because they are going to disappear on this side while sewing. So now that we have most of the sides sewn and we have this gap that is left open, before turning it inside out, it is advisable to cut the corners. And that means to just snip off at an angle right there and without cutting into the stitching. So you do that, let me show you if I can get decently close to the stitching, but don't cut over it. And if you can see that right there. So you do that in order to reduce the bulk. That way, when you turn it inside out, you're going to be able to get more of a crisp edge in the corners. You're going to want to do that on each one of these corners and cut off that extra bulk. And now we're going to turn it inside out. Just push that through. And then when we get to the corners, we could use a turning tool if you want. I'll show you how to do that right now. So you can use something like a turning tool. You could also just use a pencil, the eraser end. You could use the end of a wooden spoon handle. Doesn't have to be fancy, but what you want to do is get into those corners, push them out as much as possible to make them a crisp edge. That is why we cut off that bulk and snipped the corners before turning it inside out. And you can also do this with your fingers if you want. There are a lot of ways that you can push out those corners. Now we're going to be top stitching around the top, tucking this seam in, and Then following that around with a 1/4 inch seam, top stitch seam, and then you're going to be done. So when you get to each corner after you have picked up the presser foot and pivoted, you might find that it's a little bit harder to get going with your stitching. That's because there's a lot of bulk right here. So what you can do is just gently, not push it, but pull it just a little bit. And you don't want to tug on it, you don't want to pull on it, but just put some pressure and kind of push it through to get over those bulky places in the corners. And so now you're done. If you are giving these, you might want to go ahead and press it and make it really flat and crisp. Otherwise, you are ready to use these to wipe up spills in the kitchen while you are baking. For a link to the written instructions, see the description below.